We go begin the second part of this panel now. I have another guest and speakers here with me. I would like as well to thank Maria Neto, who was with me in the morning, and Nuno Grande about the last conversation about the book of Cisa Vieira and Pedro. Well, the book is Pedro Neto, but the subject is about Álvaro Siza. And I would like now introduction the Skopje newspaper collection. And I will do just a short introduction about these newspapers, Skopje. And one thing is for me is very interesting about this Skopje newspaper is the size of the work. Yes, how we show the work of the photographers who are involved in this Skopje newspaper. The two photographers that are involved are Mark Durden, he is with me now, and as well João Leal. And between the last publication, we saw what is the publication academic with different image of different photographers than this one. This one is strong on the image. And these three publications. One is all about the buildings of Álvaro Siza. One is about Ralph's Foundation and the building. And the other one is about the social houses, the Bolsa in Porto. And as well about the pavilion Carlos Ramos, where is yesterday opening the exhibition of Mark Durden and João Leal. And the third one is about the swimming pool in Lessa. And these three newspapers is about that, and is like a portfolio of each image of these artists. I go show two videos, very short videos about these newspapers, Skopje newspapers, for you have an idea about what I'm speaking. I hope it's working. This is the first one, and this is about the Carlos Ramos Pavilion and the Bolsa Social housings. And this is a small video about the newspaper, Skopje newspaper. And this Skopje newspaper as well have some texts from different authors. We already spoke about them this morning. One is the António Choupina, and the other one is the Nuno Grande, who was a speaker before. And the third one is Teresa Ferreira. All these three people who speak about, have an article, small article in these newspapers. They are architects and they speak about as well the Álvaro Siza buildings, but about these photography artists who did this work. This is the second one, is about the Serralves Foundation. Oops, sorry. It's not work, this one. It's a video, yes. It's not working, this one. Okay. Well, I would like to ask Mark Durden if he can speak about this work on the Serralves Foundation, why production this type of photographs about the building of Cisa Vieira.
Okay, thanks, Olivia. Before saying something about the Serralves photographs, I wanted to say something about the process a little bit, because we were going to say a few words at the opening last night, but we did realise that it'd been a long day and we didn't want to give more words. And I know it's not quite the book, but there are a few things to say about the installation that we did at the Ramos Pavilion, Carlo Ramos Pavilion. But firstly, we collaborate, and we were thinking that there aren't that many people that collaborate photographically. And it sounds silly what I'm saying, but when I was thinking about it, and there's Bernd and Hilla Becker, but they're dead. And then there's the other thing about the nature of collaboration. So we collaborate photographically, and then there's that question about who presses the button, and that idea of authorship still comes. And I remember when we first did this work, colleagues were saying, yeah, but did you take those photographs? There's still this obsession about authorship. And I really want to say something about collaboration. Collaboration, I've worked collaboratively in an artist group, Common Culture. We kind of get on, we fall out. And now we're collaborating with João since 2016. And with João's, we're different, slightly different generations. Probably João's more the younger generation that was referred to earlier. But I think collaboration, it is about a kind of give and take. And we started off, I was shooting digitally, and I think this is relevant, because I'm thinking of the audience, because normally I write about photography and I hear photographers and they're talking about cameras. We're not necessarily talking about cameras, but when we started this project, we were shooting digitally and João was working with analog, and we were shadowing each other with separate cameras in a way. And then we actually now use one camera between us, and we can't remember who took which photograph, and we're working together. And I think that's quite, and I'm not sure who pressed the button with Bernd and Hillebecker, but certainly we've actually found a way of working that is, I think, very productive and very efficient. So if we're photographing a building and we only have an afternoon, it's quite tiring for one person to photograph it. We can, you know, if I get a bit tired, or João does, we can go on and then we edit the work together. So I think that's important. It's an obvious point. But the other one is the other aspect of collaboration, and that is to do with these brilliant publications. I say brilliant not because we put the photographs in, but I think in terms of the other work and the other collaboration that underpins it. And that collaboration has been, and in the initiation of the scale of these publications, was thanks to Pedro, Ne and Arta. And also their design work that produced that. But also the way in which we've started to work with architectural scholars and learn from that. And you've heard Nuno Gran speak very, very eloquently about our photographs. And the strategy of these publications was to work collaboratively in terms of the editorial and the design, but also invite writers, architectural writers, or in the case of Nuno Gran, an architectural writer who's also can cross into photography very well. And then that would generate a kind of text that started us to think and change our way of photographing. And I think the installation at the is it Carlos one? Carlo Ramos Pavilion. The installation we did there, what I think the way we approached it, and João could say something about it, also picked up on something that Nuno said in his text about our photographs, and that's the idea of he referred to the spectral presence of Adolf Loos and Le Corbusier in Caesar's architecture was also in our photographs in a way. We drew attention to that. And that idea of layering, or that idea of doubling, also came out in the text in the publication that was launched last night by Teresa Ferreira, who's not here now, but wrote a very nice text and introduced the idea of the modernist palimpsest in terms of the ocean swimming pool that you're going to see. And that idea of doubling, repetition, I think links with the installation that you might want to say something about, João, installation, in this installation, the way in which we presented the photographs, which come out of these publications. And we haven't talked about Sorel's, but we might.
Yeah, actually, we do. The installations are made the same way the images are produced, respecting the space, walking through the space, trying to respond to it in different ways, and that happens in the show that's now on in the Pavilion Carlos Ramos, but it also happened in our last show in March this year in an old warehouse with granite walls, where we were showing the pools work, the ocean swimming pools work. And we tried to respond to the yellow tones of the walls, and because the space was visually very imposing, it was in Mira, here in Porto, the work gained a kind of a more stable way of showing. The sizes of the images were all the same framings, so the thing was all about the images and trying to isolate the images from the place around it. So large, what do you call it? Large passepartouts, large passepartouts with a simple wooden frame. So the thing here is always paying some kind of reverence to the places or to the sites, but also at the same time showing our experience of the way we do the architectural promenade around the buildings we are visiting. So this happens in different contexts.
Because I am being short. Yeah. Okay. Just the title, The Idea of Álvaro Siza, for the 3 Siza publications, as I'm sure quite a few of you will know, is not that original. We've drawn from a book that was influential on us by John Tchaikovsky called The Idea of Louis Sullivan, a book from 1956. And in a way, I've gone off, I think, maybe we have gone off Tchaikovsky. Anyway, but that's another story. That's another talk. But that it links with what Nuno was saying about the new generation, which I'd like to be part of photographers who respond to architecture. And Tchaikovsky, in the book The Idea of Louis Sullivan, wants to break away, and Tchaikovsky is a photographer then, wants to break away from the kind of convention of architectural photography by talking about an interest in the use of a building and showing the use of the building. And in the case of his photographs of Louis Sullivan, I think he went too far anyway. It's a kind of nascent street photography that you see in the pictures, in which the buildings, in some cases, are out of focus and in the background. It is about Louis Sullivan, but it's also, I think, about Tchaikovsky as a photographer. And what's interesting about that book in 1956, it precedes his fortunate rise to power as the judge in the judgment seat of photography, as Christopher Phillips called it, as head of the Museum of Modern Art. So there's something fascinating in terms of the history of photography and history of architecture in that book, Louis Sullivan, The Idea of Louis Sullivan, flawed and problematic and annoying as it is now. There was a brilliant project on Louis Sullivan by Aaron Siskin that I discovered. That's not mentioned, conveniently, by Tchaikovsky. But nevertheless, just to close, not go on too long, it's there. What Tchaikovsky, and he's a better writer, or he's a good photographer and a writer. Anyway, what he says about the interest in the building, not just as an aesthetic work, but also as something that is full of life facts, really links well, I think, with what Nuno was saying about this interest in the slightly irreverent, and that's what irreverent, the relationship, a real relationship to architecture, the contingent. But I get the sense that Siza already likes that, having talked to Teresa about how Siza likes that element of degradation as well, and it's not this over idealization. Thanks. Anyway.
Thank you very much, Mark Durden and João, for this introduction, this work. And about this ocean swimming pool, the last newspaper is out, I suppose, yesterday. I would like just to quote some phrase from Teresa de Ferreira. She spoke about this work of Mark and João, and she said, 3 parallel lines where the sea meets the beach, where the beach meets the sea, the long retaining all of the streets. Indeed so, to avoid obstructing visibility from the Koto Road, Siza digs in the single-story, longitudinal building, anchored like a boat. And Teresa Ferreira showed us a little of story about this swimming pool and how long this swimming pool was for building by Siza Vieira and other architects involved in the process. And how she thinks is quite interesting, this work of photographs, in the way of they show the density of the work of Siza Vieira through the image. I think today Nuno Grande show as well the work of Marta Ferreira, I suppose, is a young photographer where she really show as well this mix between the sea, the swimming pool, and the building itself, as well the photographs. And by this newspaper, the Skopje newspaper, we can really look by the image, as I said in the beginning, because they are really a portfolio in the big size, and photography is this, sorry. And as well to see in an exhibition like we saw yesterday. And as well, I'd like to mention here the designer, the Nes and Telmo, who treat these photographers very well. And I would like to thank for this fantastic quality of the work. I didn't show the image of the swimming pool because we have here as well the newspaper, and the quality and is fantastic. I just saw yesterday. And I think you need to just look the proper paper and see this. And this is just an appointment of these newspapers, the Skopje newspaper. And thanks very much to Mark Durden and João. If you want still with us, fantastic. If not, I go still begin with other guests today. Thank you very much. And well, now we go for the last presentation. This time I invite two colleagues. I didn't see them for a long time. We work in different institutions, and Rita Castro Neves, she lives in Porto and is more easy to sometimes we speak and see in the other events. Paul Catrica is more far because he's from Lisbon, and he just traveled yesterday for being here with us. And the idea of this panel is speaking about the Skopje publications, because we are linked by this as well, the Skopje publication, and we all publish in the different publications of the Skopje. And this is something very close to each other. But I asked my colleagues to speak about this connection as well, about their own work as an artist. And I go introduction now, my colleague Rita Castro Neves. I need translation in English. This Rita did a master's degree in fine arts in the Slade School of Fine Art in London, but as well before she did the course of photography in Arco, what interesting and famous photography school in Lisbon. And she's as well is doing PhD in the Coimbra, University of Coimbra, and she developed lots of different artist work on photography in the different places, international and national, but in the Museum of Art in the Bahia and Bristol and London and Porto Serralves, well, different meetings we have in Portugal, like Vila Franca de Xira, between others. And some, maybe, I don't know, some years ago she began to develop some work with another artist, Daniel, and lots of this work today is this connection between Daniel and Rita. She's as well teaching in the University of Porto, and she has this connection between academic work every day, I suppose, and this artist work as well. And thank you very much for coming here, and please.
Yes. I will have to move. Sorry, I have to move here because I didn't do just one PowerPoint, so I had two. So somehow this doesn't work from over there. And okay, there it goes. So I'm sorry about that because I would prefer to be in the table. But so I'll start with this. I'll start with this project that Olivia invited me. And I must say it has been really amazing to reconnect, because even if we live quite close, we don't see each other, and these lives have become really very we are very occupied and we don't see each other so much, so it has been really nice to see the old colleagues and be here. And so I'll talk a little bit about this book that I've participated in. And this is a book by Skopje. And I was invited by Olivia to produce a portfolio for here. So the context is quite particular. It's called Esprella, because Esprella is the university campus of Porto. And because I'm originally from Porto, even if now I live between Porto and the high mountains in the central region of Portugal, Beira Alta, I am from here, so I know very well, and I've seen this change a lot. I'm not going to go into all the urban questions about Esprella, which are very deep and very important, but because I'm going to concentrate on my point of view, on my approach when I was invited to photograph Esprella. So first, the thing is, I was teaching there. So I've known it ever since. The main hospital is there. And I was teaching there. And when I was invited and started working, I was coming from an angry place somehow, because there had been lots of violence. People that were very close to us had been robbed, beaten, girls had been raped. So this was this kind of campus situation that maybe connects with all of you, resonates, like you've heard about this. So I had to talk about this, and another thing that was a little bit haunting me, which was the tradition that was becoming very strong in Porto of, we call praxe, it's inducting first-year students. Where you have a lot of homophobia, sexism, misogyny, humiliating. So it's really bad human place. And I believe that schools must do, and universities must do much more. There's a lot of work to be done pedagogically. Bring in the anthropologists to talk, why are people doing this? So just, you get the idea. Now I could. So I started, and the other thing is, the place was really unfriendly and very strange. So you had this massive population in the campus traveling there, and it was really uncomfortable. So I started, it was called Meeting Point. Ponto de Encontro, you know this, Meeting Point, which came out of nothing in the landscape. But I was, as I was telling you, very haunted by this, and I wanted to show you this picture by Ana Mendieta. Ana Mendieta very famously did this performance while she was a student, and another student had been raped in her campus. And she made this performance where people came into a room, and she was, as she had been raped, like Sarah Ann Ottens had been in the week before. So this was like really haunting image for me, and I wanted to try to do the work without having all this. Ana Mendieta, as you might know, also died at the age of 36, and lots of her friends believed that she was killed by her husband, artist Carl André. So he was acquitted, so it's not proven, but friends all believe this. So it was like, what is happening to these women, and why are we still with this rape scene in the campus? So I was trying to get away from this and really try to look at the people. And I did this thing which I don't usually do, which is photographing people I don't know. So I was around the campus for some weeks, just the campus where I worked, just searching for imagery and details. So in the book, they are not as diptychs. This was quite interesting because Ne thought, I've sent a little bit like diptychs, but then Ne decided that she shouldn't do it, and I thought it was a really great idea and worked with the book. But I'm just saying this, that of course it's always this conversation, but there were other people in the book, but I'm showing here as diptychs because there is always this duo in the pictures. And so these are actually people, and I have their names, and I talked with them, and and then you have like the small details of the space. There again, you have this kind of induction, people who are doing this prash, and how they are second year and they are already humiliating first years because they believe that, I don't know, 1 year older means that they can humiliate people. And being a teacher, of course, you always think that the university, the faculty should be the place where people are all really like sharing and trying to become something and grow older in a kind of really safe and sharing and discussing things, like intellectually discussing, but also being really safe. So, not humiliating, for sure. And so these are like people that I found somehow in these situations, and then I reconstructed them, most of them. So I've seen this, and then I went to look for the people, and then I asked them, can you stand as I saw you a week ago? Okay, so it happened, they all accepted, so that was nice. And of course, there's a lot of games here that you are seeing that have to do with also the idea of categories. Why is the institution there's so much hierarchy in the institution? The technicians are not with the students, from the other schools. Why are these workers not portrayed with other categories? But even in between, there's always space. You see always this space. So, and these details, and it's always a place in transformation. Students are coming, are going, teachers are coming and going, but there is some organization or trying to organize the space, and these were almost like people. And yeah, this is quite something. or this, like, you have a big hole, and what you do is just to cover it. So it's like, and then you have the carers, the people who take care. There was a lot of backstage. It was quite funny to see Marta's pictures also. Marta was my student, so it was really nice to see the work also. And there was a lot of this kind of similarities, I thought, in this. So when it ends with, and this is like a place where care people, doctors, nurses, gurney, people who take gurneys, they come out of hospital and smoke here. As at least the photographers note, this is all very complicated. Photograph on a hospital, even if there are no people. The security cameras were there, and then securities were running around me because the project didn't have time to get 10,000 permissions, and I was like a little bit more. So, of course, I always had permission, and as you can see, the people always were like posing for me. So you see the donkey years of the first year students, not so happy. And okay, so this was the project that I did with Skopje, and this was really, for me, was very good to have the possibility of putting into practice things that were in my mind as a teacher. But then, I still have time? Yes? So I would like to talk to you about a book that I've done with Daniel Moreira. So as Olivia explained, for the past 10 years, almost 10 years, we have been working as a duo, an artistic duo. It was quite good to see, to listen to you, Mark and João, because of the process. The idea of an artistic duo is always, there's all these questions about the process, who makes what, and so for the past 10 years, I think I haven't done almost no work by myself. And it's all, we have been always working, or maybe one work, I can't even remember, but we have been working as an artistic duo. And the thing is, Daniel is an artist, but he's an architect, and I come from photography. And I'm trained as a photographer, and then I've been doing a lot of other things. But our work is a lot installation. So maybe what you see here might not really represent a lot of our work, but I wanted to concentrate here on the panel discussion, which was books. But in a way it connects, and that's the question I would like to a little bit share with you, is that how to transform the installation into the printed image. Because as a photographer, I never had, it wasn't so difficult. I mean, as a photographer really thrives on the printed matter form. Like you have the pictures, of course you have to select, you have to create, you can have different sizes, but the work is there in a very good way, which of course connects with what Nuno was saying previously, how photography almost got over the text. It really thrives on the paper. So, but for us it's complicated because we make installations that are very thought, site-specific for the places, and they are really thought for the human experience, and sometimes the non-human, but mainly the human. So we are animal lovers, and we love to have like dogs, and in our exhibitions we put up our shows with our dog, and like she's quite, it's not a duo any longer, so now it's a group. And, but so the thing is, we have been thinking, and I'm going to show you some of the exhibitions. So this book, I'll try to explain better. This book was made, it's a project, it's a 3-year-long project. It's called Archives of Bolsa Fria. Bolsa Fria is an acre in Gerês, in the north of Portugal. So it's a small area. And for 3 years, we went there, we were photographing, we were drawing, and we made exhibition, performances, art residencies, only with this around 1 acre. And we did some exhibitions. So this is like, this exhibition, you can't smell, because the idea was we had giesta, which is a kind of a bush, that is very common in the northern. We had giesta covering the windows, and from outside you would see just the giesta and imagine a little bit what the installation was, and then inside there was this huge smell of giesta. So it's you really felt like as if you were in the countryside. And also there was the lighting, so the photographs don't show so well. Also this structure, architectural structure, was based in a structure I'm going to show you that exists, but it was like the same size and you could enter it. And when the photographs were printed on the ceiling, and then you would see through them. So can you imagine how many words I have to use to explain you this installation? But there it was really very even physical. Everything was very physical. So we have been having this trouble. There were other elements, but I'll go. Another exhibition we did was with the archives. We did the same structure, but we redone it. And here we introduced much more elements. This is in our studio, so we opened the doors of our studio to show the archive of our work of these 3 years. So some of you have been there. There was video, there were many elements. There was giesta again, so there was the sound, there was the light, there was the video. It was quite interesting because, I'm not saying that I was very interesting, but the idea was that when you get in, you heard the cows, but you didn't see them because we built this structure here, which had a video. So only when you went behind, you would see, okay, the sound of the cows is not just like ambient sound. It is a performance for the camera, and it is a video on its own. But because we made this was also a little bit of a joke, because you know how we artists love Antarax, which is this device, old monitor in the museum. You always see them in museums. So we kind of built this with wood. It was a bit of kind of a clin d'œil. to this, how to show videos in places. And here are the photographs and the drawings, and this is the performance. So this work was kind of fueling a lot of situations. But the book, so I'm showing you a little bit of the book. So the book has texts by a geographer, by Susana Ventura, who's a researcher here, and architect and philosopher, and Maria de Fátima Lambert, Jorge Gaspar, the philosopher. And so this is the place. So I'm going to show a little bit, not all the book, of course, but so this also, of course, connects with reading a lot of comic, banda desenhada, bande dessinée. Of course, you can see like how to create a narrative inside one A4 page. So the thing is, this place is a very traditional area. This is Giesta. This place is a very traditional area in a village in Jerez. And you have these constructions. Actually, in our work, we had the help of some publishing articles made by a research group from here. Carlos, I always forget the name, sorry, Fernando Barros and Carlos Barroso. And they are researching, they have a research group with Galicia on these vernacular structures. So this was quite good for us because not so many people are writing about vernacular and folk architecture. So this was really good that we had here someone writing. So these structures, these places are just made with granite on top of each other. There's no junta seca, there's no in-between. It's just one on top of the other. There's nothing gluing the stones. And they are used by shepherds in agro-pastoral nomadic life. So people, but local nomadism. So people here in this village, very traditional, to live in the winter down and in the summer to move to another zone. So people had two houses. And there are descriptions of ethnographers saying like they saw people bringing even everything on top of the horse car, everything, even the door of the second house, because it was just stone and they had to bring the dog. They brought the dog, the cat, the animals, everything. So, which means that it was also trans-border, because people were going to Galicia and coming back, and Galicians were coming. There was no border. There was no political border. Everything was filled. And so we were very interested about this, and also imagining how the animals would be. So this structure comes all the time. This is very old. Orlando Ribeiro, a very interesting Portuguese geographer, talked about the north of Portugal as the place where it's a arquitetura sem data, architecture without datation. So the truth is, this belongs to Daniel's family, but it was there already when Daniel's grandfather was there. So actually, we don't know how old it is. And it feels like this when you are walking there. So a lot of animals, and there is a moment. So this is photographed in the autumn, in the summer, during 3 years. And we are just... Lots of our works are walking through, like making trails, but this one was just to be in 1 acre. To go to that acre and be in 1 acre and come back. And this is the inside. That's what we were trying to reproduce in the installation at Sputnik. And of course, this is, you see there's lots of light coming in either from the moonlight or from the sun. And you have all these amazing events, light events inside. The light events happening inside this very ancient structure. Some are still in use, and some not. This is, you see the amazing stones. Of course, you have always this feeling that things are so ecologically sound because people are just picking things from, from where they are. So when you look, you don't even see many times you don't see the walls, you don't see the cortelhos, you don't see the structures, you don't see them because they are totally immersed. Everything is like a community, which is something that I've been, me and Daniel have been quite interested also, is to think of things more as Robin Wall Kimmerer talks about the democracy of species, or Ailton Krenak describes in his books. So we have been very much looking into this also indigenous wisdom, and also going back to where we are from and looking at it in a way that we can find this way of living with what surrounds us. The plant is important, the animal is important, the stone is important. We are all part of the same community. Okay, so these drawings I also wanted to show you. Maybe, no, it's a bit further. So this is the inside, the light events inside the cortelho. And we always imagine that sometimes the shepherd by night, sometimes the shepherd would sleep with one animal inside, so kind of really having the experience there. So these are engravings. Sorry. Okay, so and some of the animals suddenly started being more like the shape of their house. So there was this also kind of more mental space that we wanted to create from being there, like when we started using imagination. A professor from here, Alexandre Alves Costa, once he interviewed many times Rosa Ramalho, who's an artist that has influenced us a lot. And he asked Rosa Ramalho, maybe I should have brought in an image, maybe you don't know this ceramist, but he asked her, do these animals exist? And she was, yes, maybe they exist, they are there, we just don't see them. I think these animals, monsters, beasts exist, we just don't see them. And this was a little bit when we were human transforming into animals, but of course drawing as an imagination. Okay, so just to go back to our problem is that we have these works, and I'll finish, these works that are installations, people are here, Daniel is drawing and we are just listening to the drawing because there's a microphone attached to the drawing, and then he puts the drawing. So there's lots of things are happening in these installations and performances, and the book is a bit difficult. And now we have a show in Guimarães, in the Cultural Center of Guimarães, Vila Flor, where we have lots of photographs. They are photographs that come from work we developed for Jean-Luc Nancy's Pleasure in Drawing Portuguese edition. And so we started photographing landscape in our studio, in our home. So the things we bring, we were photographing the making of the work, the process of the work, but in a kind of performative way. And the exhibition starts like this. Many of you know this Cultural Center, so everything looks like a very neat exhibition, 23 light boxes, really nice photography, really well printed, photographs really beautiful, elements are beautiful. And then you go up the stairs, and that's where the kind of, again, the mental space starts. You have this portal, because we've been studying a lot and we made some exhibitions on Paleolithic art from Foscoa. So we started making these portals for the netherworld, because studying the Paleolithic archaeologists, we realized that there's a lot of explanations. Okay, I'm moving into another project, but so there's a portal, and then we start going here, and you can see here that we created. This was very interesting to see the work I didn't know by these last works by Mark and João, because this is almost the opposite that what Nuno was talking. So we are bringing the shadows, creating the shadows inside the White Museum. So we felt the need to, how can we make people experience, seeing the exhibition, the feeling of being so much in nature as we are. So it's what it is, how can this be in art, it's cultural center, art. So, and another thing that's a detail, but we make all this, like we make the frames, we make the light boxes, we really build them, we construct them. So there is this feeling, they are of wood, made of wood, so it's like, these are the gestas that you saw in the pictures, because we went to pick them in. But anyways, you go through here, you move, and then the exhibition starts getting, you have this ex voto, so a lot of ancestrality here, and suddenly the gestas are really starting to get into you, and you can't move further any longer. So you are going through, and you have these clearings where the works start appearing, but you are really moving through the landscape, and the smell is really very strong. So we started 2 weeks before putting up the show, and the smell. And at the end, you might cross or not. It just is so thick that you might want to go. So some people adventure and they can go, and some people just go back the other way, which is also quite nice, because then you are like unwinding, then you go again and then again back to the photographs of the studio. So it's like reality check when you go down the staircase. So how is this going to be a book? It's a pity that this couldn't be a conversation before, because the book is going to the printers on Monday. That's maybe why I look so tired, because it has to be said, making books is it's a very difficult thing. It takes a lot of time, you were saying, like, it really takes time to make a book. So it's going on print. I hope it somehow shows it's something else. There are installation views. That's another thing interesting. We were very busy. We couldn't do it, but also we wanted to have an outsider's view. So we asked the Nishant photographer to photograph, to make the installation views, which is quite funny, because we are like handing to Dinesh, Dinesh, please have a view on this. So we were like, and it's an experience, we've done it before, it's difficult, but it's also like, again, collaborating with an interesting mind and an interesting eye. So the exhibition is until the 30th September, so you can all visit and have the body experience, not just the imagery. Okay, so that was my little question.
Thank you very much, Rita Castro Neves. Now, introduction, Paulo Catrica. I suppose you want to go to the place as well. And, Paulo Catrica, as well, he did Arco in Lisbon, like Rita. And he did the BA on the history in the Lusíada, but he did a master degree in image and communication in the Goldsmith College in London, and after a PhD on the photography in Westminster in London as well. He has a scholarship from the Centro Português de Fotografia and Carlos Gulbenkian, and as well a scholarship from FCT, Science and Technology Foundation, for research, and he still researches a lot in the photography. And he teaching in several schools, like the University, Catholic University, in our school as well, for several years, and Lusófona, and now Paulo is linked with Nova University in Lisbon in the research area, in the history, and he did a lots of different exhibitions, and not just in Portugal but outside, and he have several books. He will speak today as well now, and you have a possibility to understand his work as an artist. And this that. Thank you very much. And
thank you.
Please.
Thank you very much, Olivia. Thank you for the invitation, Pedro, and to all the organization of this conference. Yes, I made a huge mistake. I brought a Portuguese version of my presentation. So now I will try to do my best, but I will not take long. First, I want to speak about my relation with Skopje and with Olivia and the school, because they were very generous a long time ago. I will not say how long, but to publish a part of my PhD work and a part of my early work. And it has a text and an extensive interview, and this was I think the Skopje edition is very interesting because it brings out the practitioner's work and visual work into, I would dare to say, a kind of a conservative institution like this one. But this is not bad. This is not critical, or too much critical, I think. Because I think there are lots of demands in terms of taking pictures or architectural photographs of architecture. There are lots of different things which I think they are very interesting and good. I will address that in my brief presentation. And then later on, I had the chance to write a small text to introduce the work of some of our students at the MA. I was for 4 or 5 years teaching in the MA with Olivia. And this was very interesting because they were quite mature, and some of them are here, like Sergio. Others were in the other book about Siza, Marta, Elder. And it was a very interesting and a very unusual group that in just 1 year, a very small group of 8 people produced 4 or 5 very good photographers. And this was very, for me as a teacher and now as a friend and a colleague, of course, it was very honored to be part of this. So relating to the subject of the conference, I bought a small series of photographs that I did a couple of years ago, in the end of 2018, with a research center in Coimbra where Nuno works as well. So they invite me to, I do a lot of pictures of what I call public buildings or historical architecture. I like very much to photograph institutions, schools, in this case is hospitals, because I think they always reflect the ideological context that produced these buildings, and also to taking pictures to these buildings sort of 50, 60, sometimes 100 years before after they were made. I like very much how they are used, how the function changes, and how can photographs somehow reveal a part of this, which I'm not sure. Maybe it's too pretentious, but we have to try. So I used this. I had to write a text. There was a publication, and then the project had not resources to publish it in offset, so it was only a kind of an internal publication. And I wrote this small text that is published along with these photographs that starts with this very brief quotation from André Breton in Nadja, which is one of my favorite piece of writings of Breton. And he discussed this idea of Chirico surprise. And I would read in order to just to be more clear. Chirico acknowledged at the time that he could paint only when surprised first of all by certain arrangements of objects, and that the enigma of revelation consisted for him in this word, surprise. Certainly, the resulting work remained closely linked with what provoked its birth, but resembled it only. In the strange way, two brothers resemble each other, or rather, as a dream about someone resembles that person in reality. It is, and at the same time, is not the same person. A slight and mysterious transfiguration is apparent in the futures. So, how can I change this? Do we have a, okay. And so this was the project. It was a project financed by the major institution in Portugal that finances academic projects, FCT, and they were very serious and heavy historical architects like Ana Tostões, and I was invited by Paulo. And the challenge was to photograph 4 different hospitals in Coimbra that were all made by the same kind of political atmosphere, and they were sort of very much pushed by one of these fascist figures from the regime, Bissaia Barreto. One of them actually has his name. And so they were very much, what they asked me was to photograph 4 hospitals that are in different stages. One was closed, it's a ruin. The other is half a ruin, and the 2 others are still working, and the idea of this project was to look to this kind of architecture, public and functional, in order to restore them and to care them. And this brings me this relation that photographs have with architecture, and reminds me all this, the photographs of some Corbusier works that were published in Bruno Zevi's History of Architecture, that were essential in the way that these works were rebuilt or not rebuilt, restored, and how photography, like Colomina and Rainer Barham said, it's impossible to think about modern architecture without photography and film. It's not possible, because they were crucial to expand the ideas and the whole atmosphere that is, and even the materials of architecture. So these photographs were a series, sort of I don't know how many images, and they published it each building had its own photographs. Paulo had this idea. I like to collaborate. I don't. If I were to show it or to show it here, they are not sequenced by building. So you will see different photographs. And I only want to show these photographs in order to discuss some of the ideas that are behind my work and so I work mainly in this project. I work mainly in black and white, but I do some color pictures I like. And one of the things that, sorry, I skipped something. One of the things one of the reasons that I use that Breton quotation is that I think, in relating to my work, is that the surprise that Breton calls or addresses to Chirico in the arrangement of things, of the objects, it fundaments the way I intend the likelihood or the verisimilarity that the photographs bring or have in relation to places or to architectural objects, or the landscape or the environment. But a lot of times, like Mark mentioned on their project, I think photographs resemble each other. It's a kind of a mimetic, continuous game. And they bring this idea of archetypes. I made my PhD with this idea that a lot of landscape and architectural photographs are archetypes that change in different times. Of course, they have to change now with Google Maps and with the technology that we have to see things. It's not the thing when I started last century to do these photographs, and they will appear, and these places would be revealed in a kind of almost mysterious way. Nowadays, you Google these places and you have hundreds of images. But these images, sometimes they just float. It's like, just like Nuno said. They float in a kind of a random way, They don't have any particular context. So I still believe that doing series or doing this sort of approach, or like Mark and João did to Siza, is quite, and publishing them, it's quite essential it's a kind of a surviving game that photography does. Because somehow we have, this is a kind of a memory device, it's an archive, you know, it doesn't, we rarely make phone calls with this. We use them in a very, that's a little anecdote that von Kuberta told, that Samsung or Nokia in 2000 asked a lot of different artists about the idea of telephones having cameras. And he said at the time, it's a nonsense, it doesn't work, it will be a failure. And now he says, I was totally wrong, because I'm from another time, and I could not imagine the idea of bringing these 80s phones with us and making phone calls on the street and taking pictures. It was something almost like science fiction. Even the science fiction that we see in the 80s and the 70s didn't have these devices, which is, I don't know. But anyway, but I think that, that photographs and somehow continue what Nuno said. We access these pictures in social media by, we don't do it even for 5 seconds. It's less than 5 seconds to put a heart or a like or whatever. And so for me, they resemble a bit like we all know how to write and to speak, or at least we try. I'm trying now. But we are not writers or poets. We don't write fiction or poetry. So there are levels of using words, there are levels of using pictures. And returning to von Kuberta, he mentions that these pictures work as a kind of slang. This is a slang. Of course, there are emojis that substitute words. It's even a more primitive way of not using words. That's what I struggle with my students, because sometimes they have a huge difficulty in talking. They don't read anymore. This year I decided, okay, I quit. It's up to you. But and with photography, and I think it's the same. There are different levels, and I think that photographs in books are very important because they reveal ideas, just like the work that you are doing, which is fantastic. You are doing it in a very consistent way. You have a clear conceptual and visual idea, and you have the text, and so it's fundamental, and they operate very well. So in this series, in these things that I try to do, it's almost like having this pretentious idea, and I use this quotation, it's in Portuguese, that photographs as visual, just like Maurice Albach wrote in the 20s or the 30s, that the visual representations of space are an essential backup for collective memory. So my work, I try to work a lot with public space because, as he said, the photographs sort of operate as a kind of stable or a fixed image of time, which is a kind of, or has been a kind of a perfect metaphor for collective memory. And this idea of seeing Aliados, the main square in Porto, published in a book in different times, it's like what Benjamin refers to the dialectical images, that this idea of people without hair and then with hair, it's before and after. It's a continuous game that images always play. But what I'm really interested in is to discuss the position of these buildings in relation to ideas that were produced, because they were all produced during the fascist regime, and also how they resist and how they adapt to our, in this, very much in this way of using, habiting, changing and preserving. So it's too pretentious, I think. so all these images I just arranged them to bring them here. They are not like this in the publication. This is the abandoned one, was the only one that I could not. I work a lot, I do a lot of these projects because I'm a researcher at Nova University, and sometimes people like Paulo and other researchers sometimes even in sociology, for example. I'm working now in relation to Siza. I'm working in a project called Inhabiting Siza, that we are digging the ways that habitants from Bossa use the space, and which has been amazingly interesting for me, because there are architects who rebuild the original house. There are people who totally dislike the original house and adapt the house to their needs. And there is a huge perception, because you live in a kind of a monument, because they are aware that they live in a building that people visit. Not like most of us, we don't have people visit. I don't have people visiting my building. Okay, and so I like very much to work in this sort of research environment, where I have to work with these ideas, and I have to contribute with a text. And this is so that was the abandoned building. This is Sobral Cid, which is a psychiatric hospital, not in the city center. The other buildings are in the urban city center. Sobral Cid is further away. It's a kind of a landscape hospital. Some of these pavilions are already closed. Others are very much alive. It's a very interesting place. You have to have lots of coins to photograph these, because people approach you to ask for money and cigarettes. And they have one of the pavilions. It's a kind of a high security unity. So it's a very interesting place. But it is in a kind of a middle stage. Nobody knows what to do with these places, because the ideas in mental health that happened in England with Thatcher in the 80s. A lot of these big mental institutions closed, because government policies shift the uses of these places, and suddenly you have a lot of space with no use, and space is money now. And so I believe something, but somehow and then there is this hospital, Covões, which is very much a kind of a Bissaia Barreto project, and it's all done with this, what I call them fascist gardens, or fascist idea of public space. It's all very, very clean. It's a very interesting place, with views and gardens and so this, of course, I was mentioned priorly two authors that were very essential to my perception or to my research on my PhD. I did a PhD about the new towns, and I'm very interested, and I keep working on this idea of new towns, post-war new towns, in this case in the UK. And so I like very much to think how photographs help to disseminate the ideas of architecture. And for me, looking back is not, I'm a Marxist, but I'm not, I'm a Benjamin Marxist. I'm not a communist, or I don't believe that revolution will happen, but but you have to go back to some of these ideas in order not to bring a kind of a dogmatic approach on them, not to say they were fantastic. You have to see them in order, even, I mean, a lot of this fascist ideology on doing hospitals, it's very close to what the communists and the social, the welfare state did elsewhere, this idea of producing public representation buildings in order to bring ideas. But it relates a lot with, in particular, two authors, Beatriz Colomina in his major or his early thesis, Privacy and Publicity, Modern Architecture as Mass Media, and also with the perception of Rainer Baham, with this idea of photographs as media architecture, photographs and film. And Colomina discussed this idea that it was the offset technology in the end of 19th century that really allowed modernity to happen, particularly in architecture. Or, for example, it's very interesting to think that in the 20s, the editing of film and the use of small cameras in photography produced a dramatic change in the way architecture is pictured from that moment onwards, in a kind of most cinematic approach than the idea of the object, or then in the 50s with humanistic photography, the idea of the use to photograph people inside of buildings, and then now the return to the architectural object. So, or like Olivia mentioned while I was talking to Nuno, photographers like Luís Ferreira Alves. Luís Ferreira Alves was a very unique photographer because he did it for the architects, but if you see his pictures they don't resemble editorial photography that is made today. I think there was a very clever and intelligent photographer, and his photographs are very powerful, in my opinion. While most of the editorial pictures that are used, they are made to sell architecture, of course. They have their purpose. It's not, they cannot shift this. It's like these things about words, or, they have their purpose. But they are not critical. They want to sell the thing. And so, so this idea, and I will try to move on, this idea is very much to produce a kind of a nomenclature, as these sort of fragments could produce a photographic place, or to brought up this, for example, there are lots of pictures that relate, this is Covões, the landscape with the buildings, or there is a lot of, in these buildings that were made in the, during the Estado Novo. There's always this idea of images, and this would not happen today. Hospitals nowadays are functional. They don't mean to represent any architectural idea. I think the program is very much about the square meters and the functions of the place, and everything has to respond to that. And what I like in these historical buildings is that the things are there. Of course, today the things are there. If they are too functional, it's still there. But it's more difficult to produce images, or that images can reveal. This is the maternity that has a school also. It's called Bissaia Barreto, this sort of figure. It has a foundation. And finally, one of these, I ended up this text discussing this photograph. In the center there used to be a Salazar, our dictator, statue. And also I quote another architect, Nuno Teutónio Pereira, because this maternity was designed by Carlos Ramos, the same Carlos Ramos who names the pavilion. And at the beginning, and he designed the school, the secondary school that is on a hill slightly above the maternity, which I photographed in '99 or something like that. And the school is a very radical program. It has no roofs, not traditional roofs. They have, how do we say it? Telhados, sem telhados duas águas. Roof, yes. this modern, and Nuno Teutónio Pereira said that a lot, this was something that Bissaia Barreto imposed on Carlos Ramos, said, okay, you'll do this, but you will not use the same idea that you use in the school. I want traditional roofs. And Nuno Teutónio Pereira says this, that a lot of architects were forced even to retrieve from radical ideas because they need to survive and to accomplish the ideas of the regime. And as you know, after the Second World War, all the fascist regimes retrieved from radical architecture, radical arts, because they were too much connected with the National Socialists and even with the communists in the Soviet Union, etc. So, in another spectrum, and to close, I'm just showing these pictures that this is very fast. It's just 5 or 6 pictures. This project was made for an exhibition with 2 architects, with Luís Santiago Batista and Paula Melanio, and they were following Rainer Baham's script about Los Angeles in relation to a town in the south of Lisbon, in the other side of the river, Almada. And so I was very honored and happy for that challenge to picture this place. And they divided the whole county in 6 different, what they called ecologies, like Baham. And so I have not to produce an extensive series of pictures, but I have to use this idea of allegorical situation in order to fit. These were very big pictures, their ideas. And this was quite interesting. So this is the urban city center, which has lots of different layers. And this is one of my favorites, because this street is called 25 de Abril, which is the date of the revolution. And this is the urban sprawl. A lot of this is a very beautiful place in terms of geography, that suffers a lot of being close to Lisbon, suffers a lot with no planning, or this is the coast. This is one of the most famous beach areas for us that live in Lisbon. Is Costa da Caparica, which has a huge sort of shanty town from people from Cabo Verde, still there. So these pictures have 3 years, I think, 4. Nobody saw these works because then the exhibition opened during COVID, and then it closed, and then it opened, and then it closed. And this was a huge project. My work was a minor thing, because the project was an extensive research project. We'd had films, and there had other photographers, Nuno Cera, Álvaro Domingos, produced an extensive body of work to that. So it was a very interesting, but unfortunately, the pandemic. This is social housing. This is considered one of the worst places in Almada, the most dangerous. By the media, because media always produce this idea of no-go areas, but all the architecture and the public space is the best public space in that area, which is very. So I like to work with this, and I think finally, this is the industrial coast. So yes, I think that, or at least I try. Do I have more pictures? No. I like very much to work in these environments where. To produce pictures in relation to other research ideas, or to research subjects in order to invite other research or other artists even to work with me. And again, I have to thank you the opportunity for being here. And that's all. Thank you.
But thank you very much for your presentation. Well, I would like to say now for both. One thing is important in both presentations is this idea of critical sense, political sense in this contemporary work. What is fantastic in this image you show now, yes, as well Rita before about the Jerez and the book she presents as well. I just invite my other colleagues to come into the table, like Nuno Grande and Mark and João, for finish and see if any question for the end. Thank you very much, and I don't know if anybody from the auditorium wants to ask any questions to this long panel. Oh, Maria is missing, please. Please, Maria. I'm sorry. For finish, yes, for conclusions.
Has been collaborating with us, well, since 2010 or something like that. Well, anyhow, I was looking at, well, I know his work, and I was looking at his images, and he was talking, and I was feeling it's. I know the time he takes for each picture, and I feel that the key, one of the key. Concepts and strategies in his images and photography is how he captures time, and also I believe it's how he creates. It's like the relation he has with the space and with the world, like being and experiencing the world, like the concept. The Korean philosopher Jung, and he was quoting also Heidegger, this idea of Deiser, of being and experiencing. And I think that's the most important thing and magical thing of your gaze, of your relation with what you are capturing in your photography. So I had to say this because I felt it very strong, but of course, it's open to, maybe you don't agree with nothing.
Well, if there's no other questions or comments, I don't know if here in the table somebody wants to speak. No?
I would like to say to Paulo that I really enjoy his work on British new towns that you did. You've been in England, in Britain, for how many? 6 months? 2 months? How long did you take to make this?
6 years.
6 years, okay, but the traveling.
The photographs were made from 2005 until 2010, but
not regularly. Okay.
It was every 6 months I return, or.
Okay, so it was like 6 months periods.
Yeah, it's a very slow.
And every time you would go back, you would concentrate in one town. Specifically?
Yes, because I did a research on the Architectural Review archive of photographs that were published in the review and in the Architects Journal of these towns. So I spent 6 months trying to write and researching, and then 6 months doing visual work. And these photographs were very important for me, even to find things, places.
Because we are now discussing all over Europe the problem of housing, and I think this experience that somehow is being forgotten a little bit because it belongs to a period that the British people want to forget, which is brutalism and welfare state. I think it's nice that this should come back as a solution. Well, maybe not a miraculous solution for housing, and I think your work is quite interesting about that because you don't just photograph architecture, you also photograph the way people appropriated the houses and changed them, which is also a part of this.
I just received a small grant to do this project about Vila Nova de Santo André, which is the only new town in Portugal And so we are working in a different way. So I'm working with other photographers, I'm coordinating the project. We are digging up and interviewing all the architects, even Siza, that projected something for there that was never built. And we are working with the inhabitants, and so we are trying to produce a kind of a history of the ideas that were made in the city, and the inhabitants, the relation with architecture. Amazingly, all the inhabitants love that architecture. And certain days, like the British Newtowns, everyone says, "Oh, it's something that is there. It's very ugly. We don't. Nobody went there, but everyone has a very strong opinion about it, and it's always portrayed in the media a huge failure. And the new places that are being are terrible. What they are doing there, they are terrible. They are destroying this the public space. What we discussed.
So maybe you should go back and produce a book on that.
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. The thing I liked in your presentation was where you were talking about the way the political ideology constructs the spaces of architecture that you're studying. And as photographers, the observations, I think, are very interesting, and the photographs themselves show that critical orientation, I would argue. The thing I was wondering was, that's such a good point, that, you know, you probably know the books of Anna Minton. Do you know Anna Minton in the UK? Anna Minton. She's a journalist, and she ended up teaching at one of the other London schools of architecture. But she writes about the way in which the change of politics and the construction of an alternative political ideology has affected parts of London. She focused specifically on the area around where my university is. And I was wondering about the interdisciplinary potential of the photography books to go beyond photography, to bring in historians, critics of the spaces, to embellish the photographic arguments in the books. Because I think that other layer would be fantastic to weave into a short essay, a critique. I mean, even the Newtowns, you think of the people working on that, but particularly from the politically historical perspective of the construction of space.
Yes.
There are some great people there that could add to your books that I was just thinking about, that's all. It's more of a comment, actually. I apologize.
After, okay. I will ask you the name after,
Yeah, no, I just think it would actually widen and put the pieces together in a way where the photography becomes an argument about the construction of future housing. You know, because we're not in this business on our own. This is many factors that contribute to the way architects work. But anyway, thank you very much. I thought the photographs were beautiful.
Yes, there is also this tension, because I work in a research center that is called contemporary history, and history is a terrible thing. It's a huge burden, and also it is a fantastic thing, just like Nuno said. The problem is, if you revisit them in order to make propaganda, a lot of these modern politics, they use images and things in order to pick up things, but they don't reflect on. And nowadays in this country, the problem is housing. And I think in England, I think in everywhere, housing is a huge problem.
Oh no, it's even the commercial sector. I mean, it goes into different kind of ways in which the construction of space has altered what's possible there, you know, and then which areas are hit and how they're hit. And I think that analysis could just embellish the photography to give it additional, I think, support. But that's a comment. I'm sorry, it wasn't a question. And perhaps it's because it's the end of the conference and I'm getting tired. I apologize for that.
You want to speak something? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much. I would like to thank to all these people who is with me in this table. I think this whole contribution is quite important for the panel. And thank you, the auditorium as well Scopius and Pedro, because this connection between me and him is interesting for develop the photography and discussion about photography. And I hope you enjoyed this panel this morning. Thank you very much.